This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The Carter administration today added some charges of atrocities in Afghanistan to its condemnation of the Soviet invasion there. Robert Pierpoint reports.
The Carter administration opened a new front today in its efforts to bring world opinion to bear against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, charging that Soviet firing squads are executing daily about 24 Afghan political, religious, and military leaders. A high administration official who refused to allow either his name or workplace to be identified was the source of the charge. He told reporters that some 300 Afghans have been shot during the past 2 weeks at an execution grounds outside a major city in Afghanistan. He also refused to name the city, apparently in an effort to protect U.S. intelligence sources. But the American official did claim that some of the Afghans killed by the Russians came from the Puli-Sharki prison outside Kabul, where earlier this week local officials made a show for Western journalists of releasing some political prisoners. The administration official also claimed to have information from what was called a variety of sources in which we have confidence, to the effect that from 900 to 1,200 Soviet soldiers have been killed or wounded during the recent fighting in Afghanistan. The source could not break down this total precisely, but in guerrilla warfare that would normally indicate about 150 Russians have died since the invasion. The Carter administration official also said that a large number of ambulances have been backed up at the Kabul airport waiting to ferry bodies back to the Soviet Union. In what was clearly a deliberate escalation of the war of words, this official accused the Soviet Union of an extremely brutal campaign to exterminate those Afghans opposing the seizure of their country. Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, at the White House.
The administration claim of Soviet executions at a prison outside Kabul would appear to explain the cause of a riot there today. Hal Walker reports.
By the thousands, they gathered outside Puli-Chakta prison, patiently waiting to see relatives and friends whose release had been promised. Inside, the prisoners waited too, gathering together their bundles of possessions, prepared for freedom. Some said they had been in jail more than 6 years. Finally, the time came, and the men marched out as their names were called, onto the buses that would return them to their homes. The waiting relatives mobbed the buses for a look or a touch. Officials here who claim that the previous regime held 4,000 political prisoners said that this group of 120 was the last of them to be freed. Trouble broke out when some of the crowd complained their relatives were still inside. They stormed the jail, needing no resistance from either the Afghan or Russian guards, who allowed them to roam freely through the grounds. They broke into the cells, taking out a number of dazed and sometimes frightened prisoners. They brought out jail records and destroyed them. Suddenly, the patience of the guards apparently snapped. There was gunfire. The crowd scattered, seeking cover. But the shooting was not at them. It was at the inner gate. Guards would allow no more pictures and ordered reporters away. And 2 young men lay dead in pools of their own blood. The others were subdued by the killings. Hal Walker, CBS News, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Throughout much of Afghanistan's countryside today, Muslim rebels were reported skirmishing with Soviet troops, especially around Jalalabad and Kandahar, where the rebels claim to have cut major Soviet supply routes. Afghanistan's new Soviet-installed ruler held his first news conference today since Russian troops rolled into the country and took it over 16 days ago. Excuse me. Don Kladstrup reports from Kabul.
It was supposed to be a news conference, but for Babrat Karmal, Afghanistan's latest president, it was primarily a platform to thank Russia for its intervention and to attack Western countries, especially the United States, for what he called plots and conspiracies. He insisted Russian troops had not invaded Afghanistan, but rather had been invited in by the country's Revolutionary Council. When asked how long the Russian soldiers would stay here, Karmal was less specific.
They will leave Afghanistan upon the moment that the aggressive policy of the United States in compliance with seeking leadership and the provocations of the reactionary circles of Pakistan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia is eliminated, just at that moment, the limited contingent of the Soviet troops will leave Afghanistan.
Karmal would not say how many Russian soldiers were in Afghanistan, but called 85,000 an exaggerated figure. Karmal gave no proof to back up his charges and frequently hurled insults at Western reporters when he didn't like their questions.
Thank you, Mr. Correspondent from BBC, the most famous propagandist liar of the world. That's enough.
Western diplomatic sources here regard Karmal as little more than a puppet, whose future depends on how well he toes Moscow's line. For all appearances, what happens from now on seems to be primarily in Moscow's hands. Karmal may be president of this country, but he is hardly the one calling the shots. Don Kladstrup, CBS News, Kabul, Afghanistan.
At the UN General Assembly, more than 24 countries, and the list still is growing, have voiced their condemnation of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. In an unprecedented challenge to Moscow, 17 Muslim and Third World countries have presented a draft resolution which strongly deplores the intervention and calls for the immediate withdrawal of foreign troops. In Rome, even the Italian Communist Party condemned Moscow's incursion. The Soviet Union tried to counterattack at the UN, its ambassador charging that the United States and China were conspiring to revive the Cold War. In New Delhi, India's new Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, announced her support for the Soviet position. Canadian Prime Minister Clark has announced a strong series of retaliatory moves against Moscow, a cutoff of Soviet credit, a halt of high-technology exports and cultural exchanges, and a refusal to sell any extra grain to the Soviets. In addition, Clark said Canada will take a lead in trying to move the Summer Olympic Games from Moscow, a suggestion raised yesterday by the Carter administration. The Olympic Summer Games were held in Montreal 4 years ago. CBS News will present a special report on the developments in Afghanistan tonight at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time.
You know what I just got? This, a 1980 Chevy Camaro, for its dynamite look, and for good gas mileage, too. You don't need a foreign car to get that. You see, I know they're building more small Chevys than ever. So I went in and got just what I wanted. Dynamite looks, and good gas mileage. Chevy Camaro's got it. Now I've got it.
Yeah, Chevy's got it. Just come and get it. Get a brand new Chevrolet.
Wet, sticky roll-on antiperspirants. They hold you up when you want to get dressed. Get on the stick. Speed Stick solid deodorant from Menon gives you dry, effective protection against perspiration odor. Look, roll-ons go on wet. That's why they stick to your shirt. But Speed Stick is solid deodorant. Effective protection against odor. So dry that Speed Stick never sticks to your shirt. There's nothing watery, nothing wasted.
And I like that.
Try Speed Stick deodorant from Menon.
On this 69th day of the Iran crisis, members of the UN Security Council discussed the American proposal for economic sanctions against the Tehran government. A vote's expected late tonight, and a Soviet veto is anticipated. Secretary of State Vance said today that if the Security Council does not invoke economic sanctions against Iran, he would not rule out a unilateral U.S. naval blockade of the Persian Gulf. Iran's commerce minister was quick in replying to this threat, saying that if American ships move in, quote, that will result in war. Another Iranian official said any blockade would, quote, damage the world economy more than the economy of Iran. In Tabriz, where rebellious dissidents are causing continuing trouble for Iran's central government, there was more fighting late today, with at least one person killed and 4 wounded. Liz Trotta in Tabriz filed this report before today's trouble.
It was the weekly holy day in Tabriz, and the city seemed to hold its breath in the wake of the bloody riots of the past week. Street life appeared normal in most sections of the city, but there were rumors that supporters of Ayatollah Shariat Madari were ready to attack the supporters of Ayatollah Khomeini. Some of the scars from Wednesday's street fights were there. such as the Bank of Tehran, one of many banks burned by the Shariat Madari demonstrators. The official death toll for Wednesday was 10 persons, but many here suspect it was much higher. On the edge of the city, fires were set and tires burned. The crowds around the building were shouting, "Death to Khomeini," and the people complained that this message was not being reported to the rest of the people in Iran. Not far away at the Tabriz railway station, a weekly prayer session was underway with thousands of Muslim worshippers. Even the Ayatollah who presided over the ceremony, a Khomeini representative, was under heavy guard. And when he spoke, it was of the bloodshed in Tabriz. People in the crowd wept openly. The Khomeini government has tried to minimize the riots and deaths in Tabriz by describing them as local disturbances. But the challenge to Khomeini is serious here, and the chance of it spreading to other parts of Iran is a very real possibility. Liz Trotta, CBS News, Tabriz.
Islamic militants have been meeting at Tehran University, and dominating their discussions is a new potential export, revolution Islamic style. Their immediate target appears to be Saudi Arabia and the overthrow of its monarchy. Some of the militants, identified as Saudi nationals, claimed an uprising in some Saudi oil fields already has begun, and they said hundreds of revolutionists have been executed or imprisoned in Saudi Arabia in the last 2 months.
See that house? It was almost ours.
We really had plans for that place.
And we were saving up for the down payment. And then we heard of a way to get a little more interest on our savings.
And we took the risk.
We should have been more careful.
Don't take the risk. Save at a savings and loan where you see this emblem. No one's ever lost a penny where it's displayed. Look for it where you save. You'll earn high interest with no risk.
Beautifully bright, refreshingly cool, deliciously inviting. 100% pure orange juice from Florida. It isn't just for breakfast anymore.
For 38 hours, Samuel Andrews, a 27-year-old unemployed security guard, held his pregnant girlfriend and her 2 young children hostage in a house in Pittsburgh. Andrews, a self-proclaimed Muslim prophet, told police he wanted a ship to take him to Iran so he could free the American hostages. He also demanded a mass meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses at Three Rivers Stadium. The siege ended this morning. Pat Crosby of KDKA-TV Pittsburgh tells what happened.
The house had been quiet all night, but at 5:19, a light clicked on in a bedroom, stirring police and the reporters around the house. About 3 minutes later, 5 or 6 muffled gunshots came from inside the house. Police quickly called the phone inside, fearing the worst. They were right. Sam Andrews told them on the phone that he had heard noises of demons coming to get him. He indicated he had shot one of the children, possibly both. Police quickly gathered SWAT teams, tear gas canisters, and sharpshooters, and stormed the house. What you cannot hear under the noise of the tear gas canisters is handgun fire. Police say by now both children had been killed. What you will be able to hear is expectant mother Arlene Ware call for help and dive out a window after she had already been shot twice. Firemen extinguished the blaze and found Andrews had taken his own life. Pat Crosby for CBS News, Pittsburgh.
The 34-year-old football coach who had just been named to the position in November was returning from a recruiting trip last night. What followed was an odyssey that ended in tragedy and remains shrouded in mystery. Richard Roth reports from Washington.
Louisiana State University football coach Robert Bo Ryan and pilot L.S. Denscotter had taken off from Shreveport on what was to be a 40-minute flight to Baton Rouge. Their plane, a twin-engine turboprop Cessna Conquest, rose above the clouds as an FAA air traffic controller radioed permission for the plane to climb to 23,000 feet. But after that, there was radio silence. As controllers watched a blip on a radar screen, the plane climbed higher, past 33,000 feet, the maximum for which it was designed, to over 40,000 feet, more than 7.5 miles. Aviation officials speculate at that point, even if loss of pressure and lack of oxygen had not disabled the pilot, the small aircraft would have been virtually impossible to control. What they know for sure is that the plane kept flying in a long arc until it apparently ran out of fuel and crashed in the Atlantic Ocean, more than 3 hours and 1,500 miles after takeoff. Air Force pilot Rick Zerb streaked alongside the small Cessna on its bizarre flight east, but there was nothing he could do.
There was light in the cockpit, normal sort of cockpit lighting, but no signs of life. The airplane appeared from the lights to be tumbling or spinning, spiraling, and he maintained that to the water.
As Coast Guard vessels searched for wreckage and the bodies of the victims, government officials seeking an explanation for the crash theorized that the plane's automatic controls had somehow become stuck during its initial climb. After a crash that killed 7 people in November 1977, and after another malfunction last May, the Federal Aviation Administration grounded all Cessna Conquests and ordered modifications to the plane's tail sections.
But Cessna spokesmen say the plane carrying Coach Ryan had been modified, and they call the theory of stuck controls unsatisfactory. Something, the Cessna people say, must have incapacitated the pilot. Richard Roth, CBS News, Washington.
The Carter administration today set new and higher goals for the production of gasohol, the fuel that's a combination of gasoline and alcohol, mostly from grain. The program calls for $8.5 to $13 billion in government aid over the next decade. The first target is to quadruple gasohol production this year and replace 10% of the nation's unleaded gasoline requirements by the end of 1981. However, the biggest immediate problem is finding or building the refineries to distill the alcohol. There appeared some possibility today that the Chinese are trying to help the United States make up for its grain embargo to Russia. According to the Agriculture Department, private traders have sold 300,000 tons of wheat to China in recent days. There's no indication whether other purchases are to follow, but reports of the Chinese sale were credited with helping to raise prices of wheat futures today. In spite of layoffs in the auto industry, the Labor Department reports that the nation's jobless rate edged up just 0.1% to 5.9% in December. That helped hold the unemployment rate to 5.8% for the year, the lowest since 1974. One analyst said the figures show that for the last 17 months, there hasn't been any real change in the employment situation. Honda Motor Company in Tokyo announced it will become the first Japanese car maker to open a production plant in the United States. The company will spend about $200 million to build an assembly plant in Marysville, Ohio, near Columbus. Honda expects to employ about 2,000 local workers to turn out some 10,000 passenger cars a month, the first car rolling off the assembly line in 1982. Nissan Motor Company, makers of Datsun, said it expects to locate in the United States sometime in the 80s. The stock market today was mixed and heavy trading, ending the busiest trading week in the market's history.
Know what happens when you open a box of Ritz crackers?
What, Andy? When you open the Ritz, you got a party. Hey, I've got a party.
Well, sure, just open the Ritz, add some ham, cheese, and spreads to go with those golden Ritz crackers, and you've got a party.
Good party.
Good crackers.
When you open the Ritz, you got a party.
From Nabisco.
Want to know 4 ways to help get better gas mileage?
Tell us, Mr. Goodrich.
First, Air Up. Keeping tires at recommended pressure can help save up to a gallon of gas per tank. Next, Tune Up. That can help save up to 2 gallons.
Wow!
Then, Clean Up. Get new filters. And Slow Up. You can go farther on a tank full.
Keep that great GM feeling.
Thanks a tankful, Mr. Goodrich.
With genuine GM parts.
Ronald Reagan long has been acknowledged to be the front runner in the Republican presidential race. But a new poll shows his popularity in Iowa, the first real test of the campaign, has been cut in half. Bill Plant reports.
One of the burdens of being the front runner is that you have to assume that the nomination is yours unless you lose it. So you become rather cautious. Ronald Reagan is indeed very mindful of the November election, but he does have to get through the primaries. He was managing with a minimum of exposure until this past week, when he began holding one or more mini news conferences every day. That defused the charge that he was hiding, but made more likely the possibility that the candidate would put his foot in his mouth. Another problem for a front runner. There was some confusion as Reagan escalated his response to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, then had to back off.
I feel also that with our treaty with Pakistan, which we have, I think that we should be funneling weapons through there that can be delivered to those freedom fighters in Afghanistan to fight for their own freedom. Maybe funnel was a bad choice of words. If it gave the impression that I meant the United States was doing this directly to Afghanistan. And if I used the wrong words and gave the wrong impression, I'm sorry.
Another problem for the front runner is that he has to run everywhere, so he is nowhere often enough. Reagan has been in Iowa just 5 times since he announced his candidacy, while the other Republicans have been much more visible.
I think that the race is going to be decided, not by any one state, but in that whole battery of primary states. That's where the decision will be made, and I'm in for the long haul.
But that's no comfort to Iowa Republicans, whose support for Reagan, as measured by the Des Moines Register poll, has dropped from 50% just 5 weeks ago to 26% this week, though he remains ahead of the other candidates. Some state party officials have told CBS News that they think George Bush may actually win the caucus vote. Reagan will return to Iowa this coming week to do what just about everyone concedes the former actor does most effectively: appeal to the voters on statewide television. Doing well in Iowa would vindicate Reagan's above-the-battle campaign style, as well as make fundraising and the primaries ahead that much easier. Doing not so well, on the other hand, might mean that he would have to jump in and mix it up, just like any other candidate. Bill Plant, CBS News, with the Reagan campaign in Waterloo, Iowa.
Cuban President Fidel Castro shook up his cabinet from top to bottom today, an apparent effort to cope with the worst economic slump of his 21-year rule. The official Cuban news agency reported that 11 key ministers were dumped. Castro took personal control of the defense and interior ministries and named his brother Raul to help him run the armed forces. 4, 5, 6. The enraptured obstetrics team at the Italian hospital near Florence stopped counting there. Mrs. Rosanna Giannini, a firm believer in fertility pills, had given birth to 4 boys and 2 girls. Doctors said they have an excellent chance of survival. In South Africa, incidentally, another set of sextuplets celebrated their 6th birthdays today.
Maxwell House is bringing folks together. Maxwell House, good to the last drop. Maxwell House is good morning. Maxwell House is
a good day.
Good to the last drop. Maxwell House.
ADC brand. Coffee you can count on to bring people together. Always good to the last drop.
Maxwell House is
a good friend.
Good to the last drop. Maxwell House.
Let the world of Amway come to serve you.
How do you make your laundry sparkle?
With Amway SAH detergent.
How do you protect your family's nutrition?
With Nutrilite food supplements.
How do you protect your family's safety?
With an Amway smoke detector.
How come you always look so great?
I use Artistry Cosmetics by Amway.
When someone wants to tell you about Amway, listen and get the whole story.
Shop the world of Amway, so easy to do.
Pointing out his window toward the White House, George Meany once asked a visitor, "Do you know why my office is here?" because the people of this country need me to watch whoever is living there. The watch is over. Meany, retired as AFL-CIO president 2 months ago, died last night at the age of 85. George Herman reports.
George Meany, smoking his eternal cigar, seemed like a cartoonist's idea of a labor leader. Bulldog face, blunt speech, Bronx accent. He dropped out of high school to follow his father into plumber's work and the plumbers union. Before long, he was a union official, president of his local, head of the New York State Federation of Labor, and by 1939, the number 2 man in the American Federation of Labor in Washington. He rose through the ranks because of a talent for organizational detail, a reputation for total honesty, and a genuine inner toughness.
I'm not a good loser. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm disagreeable, but I don't like to lose, let's put it that way.
In 1952, Meany became head of the AFL and began work on a merger with the CIO. He wanted a single unified voice for American labor, and 3 years later, the new AFL-CIO elected Meany its first president. He used the new position to fight corruption in unions and communism everywhere. That made him a hawk on Vietnam, to the dismay of some union members. He fought for integration in the unions, though some thought not fast enough. He was the advisor of presidents and the principal voice of American labor. Last November, painfully confined to a wheelchair, Meany supervised the election of a successor, Lane Kirkland. Today, Kirkland, standing not at his friend's longtime podium, but symbolically just below it, paid him tribute.
George Meany constructed this House of Labor out of the same granite that his maker used in creating him. He forged the strongest, the most independent, the most democratic labor movement in the world.
Meany himself had said goodbye to his fellow union members last November.
To my God go my prayers, prayers of thanks for granting me more than one man's share of happiness and rewards, and prayers for his continued blessing on this nation, on this movement, and on each of you. Thank you.
William George Meany, 1894 to 1980, labor leader. George Herman, CBS News, Washington.
And that's the way it is. Friday, January 11th, 1980. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
We've cushioned Cordoba's ride with thick rubber mounts at all suspension points.
Our patented transverse front suspension keeps Cordoba's ride luxurious.
Cordoba. To drive it is to experience the pleasure of a truly road-worthy automobile in the Chrysler tradition of luxury. Yes, even rich Corinthian leather. Chrysler engineering achieves fuel economy for the times. Styling in timeless good taste. You owe yourself a ride in this new, smaller Chrysler, Cordoba. I like what they've done to my car.
How are we coming, dear?
Just fine. Darn these hands.
Your minor arthritis pain is acting up. What this pain needs is Bayer aspirin, 100% pure pain reliever, 100% pure aspirin. And remember, for arthritis pain, doctors recommend aspirin 4 to 1 over any other non-prescription medication.
Honey, you look terrific.
4 hours of relief. Bayer aspirin, 100% pure pain reliever for arthritis pain.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Fast cars, country music, fancy women, and moonshiners, they're all part of the wild and woolly action when you join the Dukes of Hazzard Friday nights at 8 here on the CBS Television Network.
A complete update on the Metro school situation.